important than them giving themselves a tribute. But I do like Bob Newhart. I go back with him. I mean, he's about 83 now.
Yeah,
So he's,
I used to watch him all the time.
Good afternoon. This is Agree to Disagree. My name's Don McKinnon.
And I'm John Cockerham. Thank you for joining us.
And this afternoon, John, I think we'll start off with, we try to stay current because our show's on for 2 weeks, and by the time it's run out and we're ready to start again, it's old news, and they're saying, why are they talking about that? But it's Obamacare and the budget, whether they should stop paying people over this.
Well, if you've been listening to the news lately, I'm sure that you've heard plenty about this already. Once again, seems like our Congress and the administration is deadlocked over a very, very important issue. You might have heard that the House has already passed the budget, which allows the president everything that he asked for, except for Obamacare. The House wants Obamacare defunded, and so they did pass that rule, and now it goes to the Senate. I think it's important to understand that the House has the power of the purse. That's really their only true power in terms of any disagreements that they have with the administration. And that's why there's three branches, the House being there to control the purse. Theoretically, because the House represents the people and is to keep the administration on track and not have them go crazy. Well, this Obamacare program has been extremely controversial from the first day. And when you think of how it came into being, I've never seen anything like it in my lifetime. This was a straight up vote with not one Republican voting in favor of Obamacare when it was passed.
But it was passed.
Yeah, sure it was passed.
Now it's law.
Simple majority, and it is law. That's right. Although, not until they went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court changed some provisions of the law.
And then it became law.
Then it became law, exactly right. And so they've tried to get it changed in many different ways. President Obama has changed it a number of times, which I'll go into just a minute or two here. But it's important to understand why the Republican House, led House, is trying this last step to avert Obamacare, because they think it's a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And
Well,
frankly,
they've made that
so
clear.
do I.
They've made that. Well, but you're not a Republican.
I'm an independent. So let me just
You got to keep that thought.
let me just present a couple of things here.
Let me get.
as
Wait a minute.
why
Okay,
this is so
independent.
unpopular, yeah. Obamacare is expected to cost between 1.1 and 2.6 trillion over the next 10 years. There will also be new and higher taxes. In fact, the law contains at least 20 new taxes totaling $500 billion that will hit medical innovators, health insurance, and it will even affect the sale of your home. It'll be a job killer. Estimates show that 88 million people could see their current employer-sponsored health plan disappear. FreedomWorks compiled a list of nearly a dozen top U.S. companies planning to start laying off hundreds of employees with the implementation of Obamacare. Also, a recent survey by the human resources consulting company Mercer, which I'm sure you've heard of, found that 12% of U.S. employees, that's 1 out of every 8, and 20% of retail and hospitality companies, that's 1 out of every 5, say they plan to reduce workers' hours. They plan to reduce workers' hours specifically because of the Affordable Care Act, which is the proper name for Obamacare, as everybody knows.
Right.
Overall, millions of workers are expected to have their working hours reduced to below 30 hours per week, so their companies won't have to provide them with Obamacare. As you know, if their employees work less than 30 hours, then they don't have to provide them with the Obamacare.
29.
Insurance. That's right.
29.
According to an April survey conducted by the Society for Human Resource Management, 41% of 603 small business owners said they have delayed hiring. So it also has that effect on the job market because of the federal health care law. That's enormous. 1 in 5 already cut hours, while 20% have reduced payroll in other ways. A report by the RAND Corporation, another household name, requested and funded by the Department of Health and Human Services, estimated a 22% increase in average premiums due to Obamacare next year, which is quite different from what's been pledged about reducing the premiums, although that is happening in a few states. Several states will be experiencing an increase of 33%. The administration recently changed Obamacare deadlines by pronouncing that companies are exempt from having to comply with Obamacare next year because they just weren't ready. Complexity, etc., they were not ready. So they delayed it for companies. However, you and I, as individuals, we're still subject to Obamacare. They didn't postpone that. We still have to get our insurance. Congress exempted themselves from the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare,
They always do that.
in a deal arranged by President Obama. Now, my grandmother used to say, never go to...
What did your grandmother
My
used
grandmother
to...
taught me a
I was
lot.
just saying, my wife, I wonder what John's grandmothers would say
my-
about this.
Yeah, that's right. She's a wise lady. My grandmother used to say you should never go to a restaurant where the chef doesn't eat his own cooking. And that exactly.
Well, that would be, we'd all shut down,
Applies here.
because Congress doesn't consider itself one of us anyway.
Yeah, well,
But that's not only health insurance.
that's another
That's
story.
everything, John, yeah.
Now,
Those
nobody
bums. Get 'em out. Get 'em out.
60% of the American people are against Obamacare. 60%. Only 37% favor it,
Yeah.
as of the last poll.
Yeah.
The bottom line, Don, when you look, nobody likes it. And even I'm even surprised by some of these. The doctors don't like it. According to PolitiFact.com.
Well, that's maybe one of the reasons you'd like it.
Well, not necessarily.
All right.
I mean, you know, if
Yeah.
you, well, you're going on the basis that they just want to make more money, you know.
No, but then the
They
point
might
is-
have the integrity of wanting to
But,
treat their
I hate to
patients.
say this, John, if 60% of them were for it, I think you'd be saying, well, they just want to make more money. Doctors can't win. They're like teachers. They can't win.
Well, they win pretty well from the doctors that I've been to. Anyway, according to PolitiFact, 83% of doctors have actually considered leaving the profession because of Obamacare. So bad they think it's going to be. The hospitals don't like it. A recent Investors Business Daily review found layoff and workforce reduction announcements covering 75 hospital groups. That's groups, that's not hospitals. A lot of hospitals in 33 states and the District of Columbia. The unions don't like it. That really
Well, we
surprised
don't care what they think,
That
John.
really surprised
We
me.
don't care what those guys
In fact, the largest
think.
union, the
Unions.
AFL-CIO, said Obamacare should be
Are you
repealed.
using them as one of
If it
your
is,
arguments?
that's a direct quote from the head
I
of the
didn't know if you'd ever used,
AFL-CIO.
yeah, but I didn't know if you'd ever used the unions.
Yeah.
because
Was I ever a union member?
I think you were.
Long time ago, yeah. And basically, you know, I did fine when I was a member of the union. That was back in the 1970s.
I know.
Things have changed.
Minimum wage was 50
Yeah.
cents an hour.
Yeah, something like that. The elderly don't like it, Don. That must be you and me.
I'm going to
All
tell
right,
you in a
that's why
minute.
I'm surprised
When I
about
get
you.
my turn, I'm going to tell you why, but that's
All right.
okay.
All right, the administration raided over $700 billion from Medicare to help pay for Obamacare. That's a huge amount. They started out with 500, ended up being 700. Under Obamacare, hospitals, hospice care, dialysis centers, and nursing homes will be paid less to care for the same number of seniors than if the health law had not been enacted. In an attempt to control costs and promote efficiency, Obamacare limits the treatment options that doctors and patients can consider. Now, I think you probably heard about that panel that they're putting together of unelected officials to determine what services are necessary and, you
There's
know,
always
what
one
they
of those,
can do
John.
and can't do.
There's always one of
Yeah,
those.
well, they're getting in between the doctors and the patients. Finally, And I'll ask you, do we really want the IRS overseeing our medical records? The IRS is now going to be given the task of hunting down and penalizing millions of Americans that do not have any health insurance. This is the same IRS which was recently caught targeting conservatives when they were requesting tax-free status.
Terrible people.
Yeah. I'll end by saying that we should all support the House of Representatives
Aha.
in defunding Obamacare
Ooh.
to prevent an economic and medical catastrophe in this country, even if it means temporarily shutting down the government. Now, a lot of people are scared to death of that, shutting down the government, my God. Well, here's the facts. These are
Okay.
the facts.
All right. Military will be paid.
There
anyway.
yes, they will. Required services such as that will continue anyway.
Let's hope so.
And a lot of people may not know this. There have been 17 U.S. government shutdowns since 1976. That number even surprised me. I couldn't remember that. Ranging from 1 day to 21 days. Now, the last government shutdown and the longest was in 1996. Guess which president that was under?
That would be
That's
Clinton.
easy. There you go. Right. Under President Clinton, 21 days. That's when he had, they used the politics even back then, and Newt Gingrich and Clinton
Yeah, I guess they did.
going head to head.
Yeah, yeah. He's
Now-
still around, Newt Gingrich.
So what do I say about the shutdowns and the fear of the shutdowns? I say none of these government shutdowns brought about the end of the world. And I'll turn it over to you.
Oh,
for
I
your
don't think-
eloquent
I
response.
don't think the shutdowns would end the world. Let me give you the other side of the coin, which is,
Sure you will.
first of all, to open it up, Congress and the Senate, you know, the House and the Senate, they had their say. It was voted. Now, this reminds me of when it didn't happen when you were a boy. When I was a boy, there used to be a saying, he took his ball and went home.
Yeah.
And this reminds me of taking the ball and go home, because the system worked. Obamacare, after Massachusetts Care, came into effect. It was voted by the House and the Senate and the President. Now you say, well, only Democrats voted for it. The people voted for President of the United States. Each person made their point made, and the Republican candidate said, if you elect me, the first thing I'll do is knock off Obamacare.
And you think that's why he lost?
It's a factor, is it not?
I don't know how much of a factor it was.
But you know it was a factor. Because if this 60% you're talking about, if they were so inclined, they would have said, gotta get rid of this. I like Obama, but I'm gonna vote for Romney. They didn't do that. They voted for Obama, and they knocked off Romney. Now I'm gonna give you the other.
Just before you leave that,
Okay.
I'd like to comment on that.
Oh, surely.
This thing was done in the dark of the night. It was
What was done in
passed
the-
very, very quickly.
What was?
And the Speaker of the House,
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi,
She's a wonderful lady.
wonderful lady, who said, and you remember this, and everybody remember this because I think a comment will live in infamy.
Oh.
We have to pass the bill
Yeah.
so we can see what's in it. Therefore, they didn't know what was in the bill. Nobody knew what was in the bill. It was a political thing. They passed it, and for her to come out and say, well, now that the bill is passed, essentially, now I can go back and read it to see what's in it. Is that responsible government?
You mean when I said I liked her, I was ill-advised in liking her?
No, you certainly are entitled to your opinion.
You spoil me. You are so kind. Anyway, I will go on with it. I will tell you this, and you mentioned the senior citizens are against it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you've got. That's your own business. I'll tell you what I've got. I've got Medicare,
Yeah.
and then to supplement it,
I have
I've got-
Medicare.
I've got MedX. And the reason I bring that up
And I
is,
have supplemental.
and so there's a reason I bring it up. I bring it up because if you have something, then you can easily have the opinion. I'm not saying you're bad people for thinking that way, but you can have the opinion that I don't think that bill sounds too good to me. If you didn't have insurance, you might give it a little more thought. So I'm saying, of the people that don't like Obamacare, I would like to see what is the percentage of people that have nothing at all to gain by it. Because what about the people who do have something to gain by it? Now, if you're going to say nobody has anything to gain by it, that one I'm having trouble believing. I'm not
Oh, I'm
quite
not
with you
saying
on
that.
that. So, but of the people that have something to gain, up to age 28, I guess,
Right.
living at home and things of that nature, of those people have something to gain. And I'm going to give you a very short, it will take less time than yours, so I don't infringe on your time, John. But I'll give you a
Not at
very
all,
short, I'll give you a very, but you were party to this, as I was, as was the town of Raynham. As we know, the town of Raynham is the last democracy. I mean, of these towns about like us, we're the last democracies. And we voted in the 70s for a sewer pipe to go up Route 44 for business. But then we turned around and we wanted to expand it in the town of Raynham. And so we voted it because Pleasantfield, which I think you're familiar with, had the septic systems to the front and they were running out. Their systems was burning out and they needed sewerage.
Sure.
So it came time to do what you say in politics, jawbone or sell. And to sell this, what we said to the people, you people in Pleasantfield and in the center of the town of Raynham, you should vote for this because it'll give you sewer. It'll be cheaper than if you have your sewer cleaned out once a year in the long run. Now, what do we say to the rest of the people, though? Someday you'll get it. So people in Raynham who didn't have sewer had to vote for sewer, even though they didn't have it. Now you go to the center, then you go to your neck of the woods, the north, and then you come up to around Forest Street. You're coming up around there, down Locust, and then you're going across Route 44, and you're going down to the Taunton line and Church Street, and in the area of the mobile home park, although the mobile home park already had it. As each people voted for that, you in the north had it already, and I don't know whether you did or you didn't, but the north voted for sewer for Forest Street. And Forest Street then voted for sewer for the other side of Route 44. Occasionally in democracy, women's right to vote, many of the rights that people have now, with all due respect to our forefathers, they didn't give us many of those rights. People who had it gave it up for people who didn't have it. That's just the way the system works if you're forward thinking. This country is one of the last industrial countries that, and there's two things. One of them is, I'll say it just as burning into another subject, one of them is capital punishment, and the other one is medical care. Now, are there third world countries that don't have medical care? Of course, they don't have any money. But most industrial countries have medical care. Hillary Clinton tried to do it. They could have burned her at the stake trying to do that. As each person tried to do that, they had to back off. So what Obama did was, actually, I hate to say this, I'm not his biggest fan. In his presidency, dust settles. That insurance will probably be one of 2 or 3 things in 8 years he did. He didn't get much done of what he wanted to get done, but he did get that done. That is insurance which I believe, now I'm going to give you the last pitch, and then the last pitch is this. We in Massachusetts have had that since Governor Romney. I don't know if you remember him or not.
Yeah.
He was the governor. Since Romney Care came in.
And premiums have been rising significantly in Massachusetts.
And people have been doing what? They've been moving from states that don't have
That's
this
true, too.
and come to the state of Massachusetts.
That's right.
I say share our pain. I think these other states should also have this insurance so that if you're in Florida or Mississippi or Utah, you won't be coming to Massachusetts when you have a problem because Massachusetts has insurance for you because you have it anyway. You got it anyway. Nothing you can do about it. You may not like it, John, but it's here.
Let me make a couple of comments on what you just said.
You say 1 or 2 comments?
Couple.
Okay, 2.
I agree with part of what you said.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that you can compare making sure that everybody in this country has insurance with a woman's right to vote or with a minority's right to vote.
Well, it's who gives it to them. Yeah.
That was clearly class prejudice, and, you know, it was simply unfair, and it was contrary to our Constitution. When you talk about distributing the wealth, which is partly what you're saying here if you dig down under it.
Yep.
That's what Obama's intended to do from
Yep.
the first day he took office.
Yep.
You start to get further and further towards socialism.
Oh,
And
you don't think we're a socialistic state?
Partly. I mean, Social Security might be viewed as that. There are a couple of
Should we
things. In
discontinue that?
Massachusetts-
Should we discontinue Social Security, John?
No.
Oh,
In Massachusetts,
Yeah.
I would agree, we're probably further along that road than a lot of other states.
Yes,
But
we
there
are.
are some out there, libertarians, such as myself.
Yeah.
See, now I've called myself libertarian and
Well, you're hanging in there, even
So
though you haven't
now
gone
you
against the
don't know-
Republicans since the
Now you
began.
don't know what I am.
I know what you are. You're a
Keep
Republican.
you on your toes now. Now you won't know what to
I
say.
see that on the left.
But,
Says
you know,
Republican.
I think you have to draw the line. First of all, nobody's denied medical care in this country. It can get expensive sometimes because if you don't have the care, you go into an emergency room, no hospital will turn you away. So it's not like people are dying on the street because they don't have medical care. But if I'm a healthy 18-year-old, somebody's forcing me to buy insurance, full-fledged insurance. Remember, this Obama plan has certain minimums of coverage that you have to carry. The last thing I'm interested in when I'm trying to get by in my one-room apartment that needs to be cleaned with my clothes thrown all over the place is paying an additional premium of $1,000 or more to buy insurance. And yet that's exactly what Obamacare requires. The younger people, I talked
okay.
about the older people, Don, the younger people should be up in arms because they are going to be forced to pay for the older people. Now, there's a couple of great things about
They're
Obamacare.
doing that for you and I right now, but that's another
A
story.
couple of great things about Obamacare.
And we appreciate it.
Couple of great things. They can't drop you from coverage.
Yeah.
And they have to take you in even if you have pre-existing conditions.
Right.
I agree with both of those. However, I don't think you have to rebuild the Eiffel Tower to accomplish that. I think you could work on those two aspects alone. But anyway, here's my point, Don. Where do you end this redistribution thing? I mean, okay, so we buy them insurance. Now, I can make the argument to you that everybody, every family in America should have a car. They should have a car. They need a car to get to work. They need a car to take their kids to their sports.
Put a
They-
car in every garage.
They need, yeah.
But you
Now,
don't need it
when
in-
do we get charged for that? When do we stop paying to make sure that everybody has a car? Because it's a very, very vital thing in America.
Well,
Is that next?
No, the difference there, John, is that everybody needs a method to get from point A to B, not a car. So if you're in downtown Boston, there are millionaires that don't
Yeah.
own a car and don't even have a
Oh, I
driver's
agree.
license. And the reason is they can get from A to B, either by cab, by subway, by bus. So you can do
So
that.
they don't need a car. But what about the people that don't live in Boston
let
and
me-
don't have subway and don't have public transportation? Shouldn't they have a car? That's almost vital. Isn't that vital?
You libertarians, you want them to have a car.
Sure.
Let me
But I
give
don't
you,
want to necessarily pay for it.
let me give you a couple of them and we'll just pack it in because
Yeah.
I told, by the way, did I not tell you this would go half
what
an
did
hour?
I tell you?
think
I
you told
told
me the
you-
last 8 minutes you told me.
I
It took
told you
10
unless
minutes
you
to
take me through to the half.
you took 12 minutes to introduce an 8-minute subject, but that's okay. That's all right.
Go ahead.
Now, first of all,
Yeah, that's
what's
true.
happening with health insurance is, if Obamacare stays in,
Yeah.
it is getting to people that are not, I'm going to call them the working poor. What gets people upset, and it gets me upset, and it gets you upset too, I think, the welfare people, they have Medicaid, they have medical insurance. Who then in this, if they have it, and you and I have it for us, who doesn't have it? And who doesn't have it, basically, is the working poor. Those people are making enough money so they don't qualify for food stamps, so they don't qualify for...
Not many of those left on.
But that's who gets the insurance.
Not
Who?
many.
Because everybody else already
Well,
has
first of
insurance.
all, you
Doesn't
know-
everybody already have insurance?
But as we get older, we qualify for Medicare. Now, there's
Yeah.
a reason behind that, obviously. We're not as able to work as we used to be.
Oh, that's being benevolent to the old folks?
Yeah, particularly as you get older.
Boy, that's a
I
good.
mean, you have limited capabilities, you can't necessarily work. You
People
run
do
into
hold the door for me
all
occasionally.
sorts of, they hold it for me lately too. I'm
Say, and they,
sorry to
and they
say.
and they call me sir. And I said, well, when was the last time?
Well, you and I are in the same room there.
Okay.
There's
Well,
no doubt about it.
not in my room.
But, you know, for an able-bodied person,
Yeah.
and this gets back to the whole thing again about redistribution of the wealth and welfare and so forth. Look, what the libertarians say, what the Republicans say, what the capitalists say, is that, you know, you can have whatever you want in America. It's a wonderful country.
You're going to work for it.
But you're going to work for it. That's right.
And if
That's
you're on
exactly
welfare,
right.
you can't have Medicaid, you can't have food stamps.
That's what they want to propose now.
I don't know. I'm just saying
yeah.
that the people who are the in-between people are the ones that don't
Well,
have
no,
insurance.
no,
And you say they can be cared for in the health. Cared for in the health. I will tell you, I was a trustee on the hospital, and a lot of people don't like trustees on the hospitals.
Were you really?
But, oh yeah, and I can tell you that there were hospitals that refused people, that sent them back up to the Morton Hospital. They were refused at that hospital. We have not enough beds, we have not enough time.
Sure.
So to say that people they have to take you, they do, but they don't. And so therefore, there are people that don't have care in this country today. And there are those others who have immediate care, and then they're sent about their business. They're patted on the head, and away they go, and they got to see a doctor, but that was the end
I
of
still tend
it.
to think, though, that if a lady showed up with her young child outside of the emergency room in a
You're not a libertarian,
in a
you're an
storm-
idealist.
in a
You're an
storm,
idealist, God
that they would
bless
let
you.
her in and give her the care that she needed. Otherwise, Dawn, even our biased press would be all over that, and that's all you'd see on the news the next
wish
day.
the
So
press were biased.
things are happening, and people are getting taken care of far better than they are in any other country.
Oh, maybe so. That's another story. But the point, now get back to the original point.
Yeah.
The Congress passed it. The president signed it. It's
Without
law.
reading it.
And now, without reading it,
Passed
and
it.
then
And then it went to the Supreme Court because it couldn't be.
and they okayed it. So therefore, it's
As a
law.
tax.
It's law. And so the point is
What are you
now
saying,
what the
that law
Republicans
law
are-
shouldn't be overturned?
No, what I'm saying is that once you get a law in force,
Yeah.
to say you're not going to fund it is to rehearing the law. Oh, you gave me facts that were brought up in the hearing, and then people voted for it anyway.
That is the only power that the Congress has to stop irresponsible spending.
The word
by the
irresponsible
executive
is
branch.
debatable.
Yeah, it is debatable, except that I just read you who's in favor of it and who's against
But
it
that you read me when they were voting on it, and they voted for it.
without
and the-
reading it. And shall we move on now?
Yeah, I
I
think.
think we cooked that one.
Well, you and I get cared for wonderfully, though, by doctors
And our wives,
and our wives.
don't forget that, honey, that's for you.
And my sons, and my
Okay.
daughter.
Yeah, me too.
They're all well cared for. Life is good in our
Yes.
family. Okay, we have covered Obamacare.
Yes, we have.
Where else did we want to go? We were talking a little bit about, let me see if there's something more current. Is there anything more current? Here's one that's funny, that this we all get a kick out of. In Boston, they wanted some extra money for repairing of bridges and fixing of roads and things of this nature. I will tell you, 20 years ago, there was money put on the gasoline for bridges. And as soon as the new governor came in, I won't say who it was, as soon as the new governor came in, he took that 2 pennies, a penny that was put on for bridges, and used it for something else. As a result now, the bridges are 20 years more in poor condition. So what they did was they passed 3 different taxes. One of them was on gasoline. The other was on cigarettes. Don't they love to take people? You and I had that habit, and when we had that, if they had done that to us, we would have stopped smoking earlier than we did, because
Yeah.
we're we're cheap. And then the other one was on technical equipment, evidently.
Right.
Wow.
Where they came up with that one?
Well, I
have
know
no
where they
idea.
come up with it. They come up with anything that doesn't move, they tax. But when they did it, ooh, the hornet's nest. You never,
Yeah.
I fell off a ladder trying to put up a thing one time when a bunch of things come at me out of a nest. It's not pleasant when the hornet nest comes at you. And so that's what happened. The hornet nest said, wait a minute, this is business.
Yeah.
You're going to lose business if you do this. They're going to move to New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and North Carolina and South Carolina. So now they're kind of, guess what, John? None of them were really in favor of that after all. That's a big mistake. The governor who signed it said, I was only, can't you people take a joke? I was only kidding when I signed that.
Yeah, yeah.
Now I want to do away with that. So do we agree that life is irony when the Commonwealth of Massachusetts passes taxes? Because now they're going to wipe out $100 million. Now the other question is, where do they get that $100 million?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I think they should take that particular tax off. It doesn't make any sense
If you were a
whatsoever to
smoker,
me.
would you say they should take it off cigarettes?
I think we've gotten very close. As you know, I'm no longer a smoker. I was and you
And
were.
I was, yeah, oh yes.
I think they've gotten to the point now where it's become more than a sin tax, where it's become absolutely punitive. That the people that smoke, you know, it goes beyond having them just say, okay, I'm going to smoke less. A lot of these people simply cannot stop.
No,
There
otherwise
is
they
no
would.
way.
Otherwise they would.
You know how tough it was for you.
There's
I
an
remember
addiction.
how tough it was
Yeah,
for me.
it was an addiction.
And so should you punish them?
Yeah.
Is that a form of torture by raising the cost of cigarettes so high that they have to, it's almost like a drug habit.
Yeah.
Well, it is a drug habit,
Yeah,
but
it's a drug,
it's almost like hard drugs where you have to start cutting back on groceries, maybe cutting back on
Yeah.
money for your kids
That's right.
because you have to have those cigarettes.
Yeah.
Does Massachusetts want to be proffering that kind of thing?
But they're doing it.
I know they're
And
doing
I'm just
it.
saying, you know,
But
under the
isn't-
biblical, the
is
poor will
that-
always be with you.
Is that a decent thing to do? Shouldn't they say at some point, okay, we beat up on you enough. This is getting ridiculous. We know that that you people are really hurting now and suffering.
So on
We're
that,
gonna
I
stop
think
it."
we agree to agree
I think so.
that this whole thing, this whole system
Yeah.
of taxing
Yeah.
people's addictions, if you will,
Yeah,
just doesn't seem
yeah.
to be
You
fair.
only go so
And-
far
and
with that. I think
gasoline.
we've gone way beyond that, frankly.
Geez, you know, I mean, I'm retired, so I don't use the kind of gasoline I used to when I went to work. You probably have the same scenario when you went to work. And now, when they put these 1-2 pennies on it, it's more difficult for people to get to their place of business. So they've run out of things that are okay to tax.
yeah.
They're not okay to tax, but what are you going to do?
You know, with the cars, that's a dual-edged sword because we say, well, we don't want to tax gasoline more. But boy, there are still a lot of people driving gas-guzzling trucks and SUVs and so forth. And you say to yourself, well, they're making the choice, conscious choice, you know, not to buy something that's a little better on gas or what have
What
you.
you do is you just point out, and people out there, and we're the same as you, so we're not picking on you people out there. When things are going fine, you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
And then when things get tough, there was a time when you couldn't get a reasonable amount for trading in what we would call the gas guzzler.
Right.
There were people in that time, I'm sorry to say, they set their cars on fire. They demolished their automobile. They couldn't get rid of it fast enough, and they all turned to the smaller automobile. Then all of a sudden, gasoline went back down as a price, not reasonable, but enough so they could afford it. And now, you're right, John, they're all back to the gas guzzlers, aren't they?
Yeah.
And they're all driving those cars.
Well, you know,
except
it's
except
great.
you and I.
Yeah, that's right. We're driving those silly little small sedans.
Tiny little cars, because we never learn. But that's the way it is in the nature of things, and that's the way life is, and that's the way of human nature. And I don't think the more people smoke because of taxes. As a matter of fact, there may be those who actually do. You know, here's the irony of government. When they tax cigarettes, if everybody turned around and stopped it, they would, as they're going to be on this $100 million for the tech, where are we going to get the money for this? So that's for them to figure out. What we did talk about, where we did have a disagreement on, is we did start to talk about it the last time, and we've got down to a little more than,
Yeah.
25 minutes, so we'll definitely have time for this.
Charter school.
We started to talk about charter schools. Yeah. Would you care to go into that a little bit? And then
Well, I already,
Yeah.
you know, I pretty much presented my position during I think it was the last show.
Yeah,
And I'm basically for them.
yeah,
And I'm basically for them because when you put everything together, what they essentially do is they shift the focus away from the teachers, and I know you're a teacher, so I know you have special feelings about this, onto the student. In other words, because the unions aren't as effective in charter schools, you know, and because there's a demand there in terms of the accomplishments and the results of the children that are in charter schools, they tend to produce better taught kids than the public schools do.
I will tell you something, John, that may surprise you, and it may surprise people out there, and educators may deny it, and if you do, I'm sorry you do. The number one problem in a classroom, they've singled in on it, and basically they're pretty well ready to say to you, we can't solve it. It's bullying. Kids who are bullied are to a degree that they want to get out of a school system because of it. It means that if you go into other than the public school, the bullies know that they don't want to go to those private schools. They don't want to go to charter. They don't want to go to the schools around, the private schools around, because they can't do what they do. They're bullies. They're bullying it. We hardly watched it. You didn't watch it at all, the Emmys last night, but we got there right near the end. And there was a guy that directed this show that wins every year. I forget the name of it, but anyway, it's a show that wins every year. And the producer, director, whoever he was, looked like an everyday guy. And instead of thanking his mother and father and everybody, he said, holding his Emmy up, "This is to the bullies." This show was about people who were bullied and things like that. Here's to the bullies. That's where we are now. Where are you, bullies? It was like my moment of revenge on the bullies. But the system doesn't seem to be able to solve bullying.
Well,
part of it's I'm going to tell you right out. No, sorry to say this, people. Don't listen if you don't. Turn it off. It's the parent. They want to protect their child from being bullied by bullies. And so, therefore, they don't want their child singled out as being on the bus. You know, in the old days, on the bus, you threw a person off the bus. You try throwing somebody off a bus
I agree.
nowadays. And so right down the line, there is one of the problems. So the charter schools, let me give you my feeling on the charter schools. Of course, they're not all bad. I'm sure they're a fairly good school system. Is it because they're non-union? I submit no, because you and I ended on this the last time. They will eventually have unions. There is nothing that operates in this country that eventually, be it Walmart maybe, isn't going to get to a point where they're going to have unions. So if the problem is union, then you definitely haven't solved the problems with charter. As soon as they get union, if the union was the problem, you'd close the charter schools if the unions are the problem. I have always believed that the number one problem in any business, be it education or any other business, isn't the employee, it's the management, the employer. What the contracts have given away, I will submit to you that you are correct in some of your thoughts. Notice I said some.
I noticed.
I didn't know if you said some. I didn't know if you picked up that word some. But you are correct in the fact.
That's better than it used to
That's
be.
better than none. This is progress.
Yeah, that's right.
But the unions have out-negotiated management in their negotiations, and so they've managed to get things. Often you say it's the wage. Often they've given up on the wage to get something else, which is administratively lighten their workload, or worse.
Sure.
And
In either case, though, whether you talk about more wages
Yeah.
or whether you talk about lightening your load,
Yes.
you're still talking about the potential for less efficiency in the teaching process.
That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
You agree? That's what I'm
We
saying.
do agree on
we
that.
agree on that point.
Yeah.
But the point is, if management will take control again,
Right.
then employees are employees. They will do what you tell them to do if it's within the contract. The problem that you run into, I believe now, is the fact that management, and I managed contracts for, 39 years I managed contracts. I will tell you, of all the things I did, even though I'm pro-union, as you know,
Right.
I believe that the unions and the GI Bill created the middle class. That's my belief. So, but I've all said that. The one thing I really didn't enjoy, even though I like the people, don't get me wrong out there if you say, I didn't know you weren't having a good time. I wasn't having a good time, John. Negotiating a contract as management is not a good time. And I believe for the union it's not a good time. It's when people get together and basically it's run again by most things in the world, by the lawyers. They run those things, and eventually they say, if you don't give this, you can't get that. And that's what the trademark that's going on is. That have unions gone too far? In some cases, they have.
Yes, they
In
have.
other cases, they haven't. If you go down into a coal mine now in Pennsylvania and you're swallowing coal
Right.
dust, you'd say, where the union started, by the way,
And with good reason.
health.
I would agree with you that
Abs-
back when the union
Yep.
started,
Yes.
based upon what they wanted to accomplish,
Yes.
that there was a need for them.
Yes.
Because citizens were being abused.
Yep.
There's no question about it. Everything fell on the mighty dollar,
Yeah.
and so unions represented the people. However, since that time, Don,
Yeah.
I've seen a tremendous change where the unions now have not only gone past the midpoint, you know, somewhere your salaries and your benefits have to balance out with the profits of the business. When the unions drive you over that point, then you are now detrimental to the business, and so are the unions, because if I'm making 2 cents margin on a product, I can't pay 10 cents
Oh, I
to
know.
my workers.
There have been
and that's what they're doing.
There have been unions who have driven people out of business.
Absolutely, a lot of them.
And that's just the way of the marketplace.
So,
though.
but to get back to the school part.
Yeah.
Now, as a parent, you were a parent, I was a parent. What I wanted for my children was the best education that I could get them.
Right.
In them.
Right.
And that's why, you know, generally whenever anything came up to do with the schools, particularly if it was aimed towards the kids,
Yeah.
I voted in favor of it. But when
And
something-
Raynham basically has voted pro-education.
Yes, they have, much
Not
more so than
pro-union,
Bridgewater.
but pro.
Much more so
yeah,
than Bridgewater, and I never really had a problem with that. But when the unions get active and they start pushing the teachers and their benefits and their pay without regard to the kids, then that's a different story. And I haven't always been in favor of
What-
that. Now, charter schools,
yeah.
which are put together
For now.
with the idea of giving your children
See,
a
I'm not
better
even sure.
education.
Are you sure there's no? See, I haven't.
Sure.
I just look at charter schools as a private school, quite candidly.
No, actually, they, you know, if you read the literature on it, it says essentially that, you know, they're really a form of public school. It's the local environment that they're in. They have people from the local community. They do get public funds when a student moves over there. They take the funds from the public school.
Yeah.
The whole thing is to try to focus on the children and not let the unions and the benefits of the teachers get far beyond what the equal benefits are to the kids.
It depends on where the charter school is. First of all, some charter schools have gone bankrupt. Some of them have folded. I'm not sure where they are in the MCAS, but I'm sure that they're basically pretty much the way the rest of the school systems are. Your school now. Now we'll.
I'm not sure about the
We'll
MCAS.
out our own kids because they're not here. They can't
Yeah.
hear this show, right?
Right.
My 3 children
Yeah.
went to public schools. They went to originally there was no kindergarten and things, so they went down to Brick House down in Taunton, you know, and
So
they
did
went.
mine.
Yeah, and they went 12 years to the
Yeah.
Bridgewater Raynham school system. All 3 of them, and I like to brag a little bit. They're all successful.
Yeah.
They're successful not only
same here.
socially and morally and
Same here.
living a good life, but they have good positions.
By the way,
Yeah.
President Obama's kids don't go to public schools.
And that's his choice to do.
Right.
And there are many people who went to private schools of people that I know who I taught with. They went to Coyle and different schools like that. They went to BC High and things like that. That's the choice of people to do. But I'm just saying, I got out of public education what I believed I should. Now I've got a granddaughter that's graduated. She's going to college now.
Good.
She went BR all the way. A grandson that switched over to Coyle, but he had 8 years of good education, I believe. I've got 2 grandchildren. One graduated from Bristol Plymouth. The other is in the Taunton school system. So they're all public school. None of them are private. It doesn't matter that Obama or that John Jones, who lives next to me, decides to go to private school. I got out of public school what I wanted. But one thing I will tell you, John, that has happened to teachers, and it's something we all have to be concerned about. Not you, but there are people so bad-mouthing teachers that teachers begin to wonder, why am I in this profession? And it wasn't that way with my aunt. It wasn't that way with my cousins. It wasn't that way with my uncle. It wasn't that way with me. And now I'm to the point, my daughter now is teaching in the song. I said they've been in McKinnon since around 1920 in public education and still is in public education. But my granddaughter now doesn't think she wants to go into be a teacher. And so the public relation image for the teacher is going down. Now, I'm going to call you on this. Do we have to say it's the unions that are destroying education in Massachusetts?
I think the unions are certainly part of it, but when we get to the education issue and what's destroying them, I'm going to be really old-fashioned about it. Remember, I grew up with my grandparents. My grandparents were staunch disciplinarians.
Seem to remember your grandmother said something.
She did. They taught me to respect the teachers.
Yeah.
And back then, and you
Yeah.
were probably the same way, if I got in trouble in school.
Yeah, that was
and
the old adage. Then you got more trouble when you got home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I didn't call up and say, hey, Ma.
Yeah.
I called her Ma, even though she was my grandmother.
I know, because you grew
I
up
was
with your
raised
grandmother.
with her.
Yeah.
I didn't call up and say, hey, Ma, you know, the teacher's over here. He's giving me a tough time. Can you come down and take care of this? She said, wait till you get home. I'll break your neck.
Yeah.
You know, something along those lines. Also, respect for elders,
Yeah.
respect for police officers. Parents today don't spend the time to nurture their kids and teach them properly. And as a result of that, and I got to go to the technology thing too, because computers are wonderful. But when these kids are playing video games 12 hours a day, Dawn,
That's not
what
right.
do they even learn? They lose their social skills. There's nothing there. So there's a lot of things wrong with the environment, and there's no question it's much tougher for a kid to come through all this now than it was for you and me.
You know,
Because it's
and
so
I'm
bad
going to
in the
blame a
schools.
little more on the parent then, and I'm going to say
Yeah.
that I think teachers today, now, there are teachers that, there's always the exception to the rule, but I believe if you bring up teachers that aren't doing well, that's the exception to the rule. I would say teachers today are doing wonderful. They're good people. They're morally driven. They want to help their children. I will give you a quick example of, and I always bring up Molly. People say, stop bringing up Molly. But my granddaughter Molly is now going to Emerson. But she sponsored legislation on baseline testing on concussions. But
Yeah,
I will
you
tell
mentioned
you,
it.
but I will tell you this. When she received a concussion, she went through a period of 3 to 4 months when she couldn't do an assignment. There was no way she could remember it from day to day. And I will tell you this about the teachers over at Bridgewater Raynham High School. They stayed after school with Molly. They worked with her each time. When she finally got better, let's say that she could comprehend again, she had to do 2 terms in one. And she had to take tests at extra time with those teachers. Those teachers, I will say this, and I said this to the superintendent, I said, the principal at BR, the guidance counselors, second to none at BR, and the teachers that taught my granddaughter were excellent,
Good.
and they stayed with it.
You're very fortunate.
I believe that's the way it should be, though.
Well,
and-
I
and
believe
the way
that's the way
was.
it should be, but I
But
don't
I will
believe-
say, I'll give you my uncle's story. You gave me your grandmother.
Right.
You ready for my uncle's
Oh,
story?
you had an uncle like my grandmother?
No. I'm sure that no one was
Okay.
like your grandmother.
Is your own-
There's only one like your grandmother.
That's
no,
true,
no, not
boy.
that way.
You would say that
I
if
would
you
say.
knew.
No, but my uncle didn't have authority over us. You know, he was my uncle, and that didn't have authority. But my uncle was the principal of a junior high. And junior high in those was 7, 8, and 9.
Right.
And then the high school was sophomore.
It started at sophomore?
It's-
Because my high school
yes.
started at 9.
Yeah, well, ours did. As a matter of fact, it was in one building.
Yeah.
And it was 7, 8, and 9 on one side.
Oh,
and
okay.
then and then that was the rest, you know. And my uncle came up to visit my father, who probably went to grade 8, maybe 6, used to help him with the bus schedules and all because my uncle couldn't figure that out.
Yeah.
He was an attorney. He had graduation of BU and went to Harvard. But he had trouble with the bus schedules. So he came up and he's talking to my father. And he says, well, you know, this is my last year coming up. And my father said, well, why? You're young enough. You don't have to retire and all. He says, no, this is it. He said, I'll tell you what happened to me. He said, I, as a principal, would say to a parent, I want to see you in my office, to the parent. He said, they would sit out in that office and they would be shaking. They were so nervous. Mr. McKinnon wants to see me. What could this all about? He said, I got a call from a parent. You know what the parent said to me? Frank, my father's name, Frank. You know what he said to me, Frank? I want to see you. I said, excuse me? He says, I want to come in and see you. I got some. And my uncle said, this is my last year as a principal. He says, because see, that's the turning of the pendulum.
Yeah.
The fact where the parent now thinks the
Right.
teacher or the principal is on the defense. And my Uncle Leo said, it was a wonderful career. I really enjoyed it, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, it makes it much
So
more
it's part,
difficult
I'm not
today.
blaming, no, you people out there saying I'm blaming
Yeah,
parents.
it's parents.
That's not it, but that's part of the
You
picture
gotta
of the
teach-
puzzle.
You have to teach your children
Yeah.
respect.
Yeah.
I mean, that, and you have to teach them
And you have to
discipline.
send your kids to school. Yeah, I'm gonna ask
Today
you,
it's
how
going
do these
crazy.
kids, there's a college that stopped football, I forget the name of it, because of the hazing that was going on at the college level.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that, but I knew it.
Don't tell me that they weren't bullies in the
Yeah.
grammar school, in the high school, and now they get up to college and they're bullying.
Well, you know,
They've been doing this right along. Bullying, why can't we solve it? Why don't we sit down and say, we're going to, by the way, there are people who say they have solved it. They haven't.
no, well, you know, I guess it's the time period, Don, when I don't think the term bullying even existed when I went to school.
No, and I'll tell
be
you why
honest
on
with
that,
you.
and you'll tell me why on that.
Yeah, I'll tell you why on that.
Yeah, because John, I know that you were a welterweight boxer.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
so
but
I don't think you.
that's
John, how
that's
many
why
bullies
I
would you?
became a welterweight boxer, Don, because you know,
Yeah.
back then,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you settled your own things.
I
You
know.
went out in the schoolyard, you know, you
did.
punched it up.
You went behind
and
the
the next
school.
day you moved on.
That's right.
There was-
And not only that, John.
But you know,
not
what, it
only
taught you to be tougher in life
I
is
know,
what I'm saying.
I know,
The one
I know.
thing we do where we try
I
to
know.
cover our children.
Parents
and
are saying,
protect
"Oh,
them-
here they go." Well,
protect them
you
from
just
everything.
listen to this.
Protect them from everything, and then when they get out in the real
know.
world, Don,
I know.
what happens to them? They're not prepared for what. There's a lot of bad people out there.
Well, that's why they're still bullying when they get to college. I will say this: when I went in to go to college, they had a little beanie there, you know, and of course I was a veteran, so that made a difference, of course, you know. And they said to me, "I don't suppose you'd want to wear the hat." And I said, "I'm going to make it very short. That's well advised on your part to say that.
Yeah.
You know, don't even discuss it." So when we got to college, we meaning all the kids, this hazing and things like that going on. Well,
It's a-
guys will say,
It's a
"Well, I
different
was in,"
attitude.
you know.
I got to tell you this.
Yeah.
I think you'll appreciate.
I know
this.
because you took.
I think you'll appreciate this little story of
I know.
when I was young. When I
people
was a
talk
small
amongst
kid.
yourself now. This is good.
Yeah, the kid that lived across the street from me was a real tough kid. His family was very, very poor. I told you I lived on a
Yeah.
farm.
Yeah.
We were poor, etc.
Yeah.
But as poor as we were better off than they were. There was a kid there my age, and he had nothing. I had a few things. He had nothing. And every time he saw me,
Yeah.
whatever I had, he'd take it away from me.
Ah,
And we'd get into a fight,
yeah.
and
Was
he'd
he
beat me up.
was he taller and older?
No, he was about the same age, same size.
See,
So-
that was another thing in our day. In our day, you fought within your age,
Yeah. Well, this was within my age.
and he still beat you up.
He beat me up. So I went to my grandfather. Okay.
Not your grandmother.
No, my grandfather. I said, hey, I said, you know, this guy, I don't know what to do with him. He keeps beating me up. I said, you know, I lose to him all the time. This was before
Yeah.
I started
I
boxing.
don't know.
This was when I was about 11 years old.
I don't
So-
care what they like. I love this stuff.
You know what my grandfather says
What did
to
he
me?
say?
Now, here's the difference
Yeah.
between today's parents
I know.
and yesterday's parents.
Yeah, I know.
My grandfather says, well, he says, I'll tell you what you do. This is my grandfather.
I know.
They had some apple trees in front of the house.
Yeah,
Short apple trees.
yeah,
He says, John, he says, what you do is you climb one of those apple trees
yeah,
and you wait for Ronnie. His name was Ronnie.
yeah.
Okay? When Ronnie comes walking across the lawn, you jump off the apple tree.
Wow, on him,
Yeah,
on you.
spin him around, he said, and hit him right in the mouth as hard as you can. So that's exactly what I did. I hit him right in the mouth as hard as I could, and then he got up and beat the crap out of me. That's
That
a
isn't
true,
the way I thought this would end.
that's
This
a true story.
Yeah, but Well, what happened after that? Did he beat you up every day after that?
No, I finally took boxing lessons, and that was the end of that.
That was the end of
That's why I
Ron.
became a boxer. But
Did you fight Ron at the end?
No, no. Actually, he came to visit me once when he was a little older, but that never really
It never developed into another fight.
manifested. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he wasn't aggressive.
I will say this for people out there, and you may think this is getting off on it, but this is what John and I, we enjoy this sort of talk. And the
Well, it
kids.
shows a difference.
Well, the kids in my.
Because you as a grandfather, now, you're going
I
to tell your son.
I cannot tell my son or grandson to do what I did, because one of the
yeah,
things
there
was
you are.
now they have to get on a bus. They
Yeah.
come from the school, they get on a bus, they have to be good on a bus or else they got troubles, and they get home and then they're home. And so in those days, we didn't have buses. If we had trouble with a kid, we'd say, we'll see you after school.
Right.
We'll see you out in the yard or behind the schools, and you had a fight.
Well, my
But
bus driver would just throw kids off the bus. He had no.
in those days,
No hesitation.
no, in those days.
Yeah, he said, get off right now. He
Yeah,
says, get
yeah,
off.
Yeah.
It's like when you saw that poor kid getting beat up by those other kids in the bus.
Yeah,
or
there was a thing on a bus.
a back, and the driver did
Yeah,
nothing.
yeah.
As they practically beat the kid
And
to
the
death.
company backed up the driver, saying the driver
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
have
not good
liability.
policy. Baloney.
Well,
The
no,
kid
they didn't
could
have the
been-
liability
looked like
insurance
he
to
was in
take
the
him.
process of
I
being
know.
killed there.
I know.
But see, that's another thing. Policies get in the way of common
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
You know how it is.
But what I'm saying, here's another thing that happened, though. Most of the kids you fought with became your friends
Oh,
afterwards.
absolutely, yeah.
You shook hands,
Absolutely.
and you had established the turf.
Yes.
So when
Yes.
we went from up to grade 6 into 7, where my uncle was the principal, that's when you had to test more or less because you didn't know these kids came from other parts of town where you fit.
Right.
But once you get to high school, there were no fights, there was no bullying, there was no problem. You knew your turf, you knew who you were. And I will say this, older kids often protected younger kids. And if they saw you being bullied by somebody, they would come over and straighten that
Well,
situation out.
because they felt responsible.
They were
So
responsible.
the point is,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that parents should let their kids get the stuffings beat
No,
out of them.
no.
But,
Well,
to
the fact you
keep
told the story where you still got beat up,
Yeah.
John, John, this did not help
but see,
where
it
we were
worked out
going.
well. But
You worked out well.
to keep them Dawn from experiencing adversity in life is not doing them any
I know,
favors.
I know.
For instance, my grandmother, again,
Ah,
always told me, be a good boy. No matter what, you be a good boy.
Yeah.
Always be a good boy.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that, and I
and
took that for what
I'll
it
bet
was
you
worth.
have been,
I
except for
tried,
the kid
but
you jumped out of the tree.
I don't think she did me any favors in life when she told me that, because she never told me about the bad boys.
Yeah, what do
She
you
never-
do with the bad boys?
She never told me about the adversities in life, Dawn. So I was ill prepared for that part of it. Because I
You
thought,
were not. You learned how to box.
well, that's the physical side of it. I'm talking the life side.
Ah,
And so, you wonder sometimes, you want your kids to be the
this
best
has
and
been
everything. but
philosophical, John. I
you have
think
to
we've
prepare
solved
them.
some problems. People paid attention.
I think
we
did.
solved some problems.
There's a
here
lot of
today.
more where that came from. But not a lot of time.
I've only heard of your grandmother, but let me get back to charter schools.
Yeah,
I
okay.
think that, and this is something I will lead into the next show saying, where one of the big arguments I've had with state officials over the years is they are responsible for education. They should pay for education. Therefore, if you can have all the charter schools you want, state, but pay for them. Don't take them away from our local school and wind down our local schools so they have to get by on a reduced budget. Pay for it. So anything you want to do in the state, you should do. Now, what does the state do? They pretend, and there are state officials that pretend that they don't, that you have your own school committee. Don't you vote? Don't you do? No, you don't. You stay within the law. What happens if a school doesn't seem to be going later? There was MCAS where the kids didn't do too well. They're talking about taking the school over. How come? Because they can. Because the state runs the school. And what I'm saying is, okay, school, but don't break the school budget with charter schools so that the school doesn't have enough money to do its job and then turn around and say, see, they left you because you're not doing a good job. This will, in a way, it's like raising your taxes on cigarettes. They want to punish you by taking the kids out of the public school, put them into the charter school, come out of your budget so that now let's see if you're going to do anything. I've got less money to do what I was doing.
Well, that's
They're
their,
not our
that's
friends.
their way of pressuring the public schools to meet certain standards.
And they don't. Do they? Do they get better? Does Chelsea get any better? Does Lawrence get any better because they have 90% of the kids who don't speak English? You know, do these school systems get any better? No, they don't. John, I want to say thanks to you people for watching for this time. Next time we will not get into personal things. Well, we may if we feel like it.
All right, well, this is
Thank you
fair to
very
me.
Thank you very much. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you for being with us.